Okay, so what are you saying, people, and welcome back to your favorite YouTube channel. So today, guys, like always, in the weekly analysis for you on the screen, other pairs will be analyzing today, but make sure you stay to the end of the video because I do have a bonus pair in store. But yeah, guys, as always, we'll go through my trade for the week first and then progress into the analysis shortly after. If there's a particular pair you want to see, feel free to skip ahead using timestamps below. But I had one position this week on pound USD, I had one position last week, which I was carrying over into this week on pound yen, which did end up in being a nice winning trade. As you can see here, going to the trade around there, lovely push to the upside. We spoke about this trade on my last weekly analysis video, and I said it's looking pretty bearish, probably going to see a stop loss early next week, but price had other ideas, it found support and continue my direction to the upside. So that just goes to show you, even with all my experience, 6 years plus in the markets, you generally can't predict what the market is going to do. You just have to make educated guesses, take trades, based on your probabilistic edge and let the numbers play out. This one, after we did see some nice momentum in my direction, it was looking pretty bearish. We closed for the week around here. It wasn't looking too good, but I was blessed with a lovely move there to the upside. So lovely winning trade there on pound yen. Pound USD, currently in some shorts for this one. I entered this one on Thursday after this bearish engulfing. Nice wick to the upside, I believe. It was CPI, I think it was. Nice wick to the upside, taking out some highs there, came into a nice area of confluence and hopped into some shorts. So currently in this trade, floating some profit here, but still a long way to go. I'm still looking for a push back down into this swing low here for the trade. But yeah, we'll go into a bit more detail with pound USD because obviously it's a pair we'll take a look at in the future. But yeah, currently in some shorts for pound USD, so only one trade this week. But onto the analysis. So Euro USD, this one kind of just sideways, not a lot of activity for Euro USD. As you can see, resistance up there, we got support just below it, and this week the market is pretty much just consolidating between those two levels. So I haven't really been looking to do too much of Euro USD. However, high time frames do look good, and I'm favoring more downside for Euro USD. You can see here a massive level of resistance on the daily chart here. So the original resistance, big move to the downside, market came up, tried to break through a few times, reacted bearish, nice move to the downside, brief reaction there, bit of a pullback, big move to the upside, and now we're back underneath that same level. So for me, for Euro USD, the market is still bullish. We are still seeing higher highs and higher lows here. However, we're trading underneath a very critical level of resistance at 1.1, and I will be looking for buys for Euro USD, but it has to be above this level. I want to see price breaking above this, then okay, if we do break above that, I would favor us to come right back to the highs there at 1.123. So above 1.1, I would be very bullish on Euro USD. Below it, especially for all the wicks we're getting, as you can see, multiple wicks into this level, especially on Thursday after the news, big wick through that through the zone. The market pulled back and now closed with a nice bearish engulfing the following day on Friday. So for me, for Euro USD, things are looking bearish, and I would be favoring another move to the downside for Euro. First target would be into this price support here on the left, and the next target, if we break through the first one, would be this price swing low here as well. But for next week, just looking at a push back down into the support level, you can see even from a daily perspective, things look good for a move to the downside. So taking that information into the 4H, there's two ways you could go about it. Potentially waiting to see if the market can come back to that region there, then you look for your sales up there around 1.103, and then look for your entries to take the market down again. So if you want to play the range, this would be a nice place to look to get involved. We potentially may not come up there again, but if we do, that's obviously a logical place to be looking for some entries. Or if you want to ride momentum and wait for some break of structure, let's see if you can take out some of these lows here, wait for the breakout, look for the retest of that structure, and then look for your trades. This will be obviously a slightly more sensible place to enter the market, but in terms of risk reward, not as good as the first proposition. So it's up to you how you want to tackle this for Euro USD. I'll definitely be bearish going to next week and looking for more downside. I'm not too particularly keen in getting to some shorts for Euro because at the moment I'm currently short pound USD, and they're very similar pairs, so I don't want to be looking to short Euro and pound. I'll just see what happens with my pound USD trade. But this looks like a very, very high probability setup with Euro, especially with the higher time frame analysis taken to the 4H. You can see we do have a bit of a bearish trend here at play. Market's giving us lower lows and lower highs. Right now is consolidation, so it's up to you if you want to wait for the consolidation to break out, wait for some pullbacks, then short, or wait for a bigger move to the upside, retest the highs of that resistance again, and then look for your short. Any which way though, I'm looking for 1.08377. 1.08400 we'll call it for next week. So that is the plan and the bias going to next week for Euro USD. Okay, so up next we've got dollar yen, USD JPY, looking very, very bullish this week. I was expecting some more upside. I did say some buys look good from down here. We just missed this zone. I'm pretty sure we opened for the week around here, pretty much as we left off from last week. So was hoping for a bit more downside, come test this resistance, well, was resistance, now turns support, just above 141, and then we can look for a buy to the upside, anticipating that next higher low. We did see it form just a few pips higher than expected, but yeah, a lovely move to the upside, taking out these highs and coming into our target at 145. So USD has done its first job. Our overall kind of vision for dollar yen is still the highs up here at 150. You can see on the daily chart, we're still printing in higher highs and higher lows here. So, you know, for me, the direction of the market is still bullish. If you scale to the weekly, the monthly, you can still see the market is very bullish, still seeing a lot of bullish momentum present. So very, very high chance we'll come back and retest the highs here, 150, 152. So going forward for dollar yen, we're still looking at buying opportunities, and there's two setups I'm looking at personally, which is obviously the break and retest of the high here. If you can see a nice breakout above that, looking for some pullbacks after, would be a very nice opportunity as well. Or if you're looking for slightly more shorter term opportunity, which would be the break and retest of this high, which we've just broken through, you can probably sneak some buys in from that same level back into the high at 145. I'm not too sure if you want to hold it past that level, just in case the market may reject it again, may start to range and come back, take out your trade, but still looks like a very feasible opportunity on the break and retest of the price swing high there as well. So maybe in the lower time frames, this will make a little bit more sense. Obviously the risk reward may not be as good, but still a good opportunity nonetheless. But for me, for dollar yen, still very bullish. Again, the next kind of target for dollar yen, it certainly isn't 150 up there. It's a little bit too far away to target. I mean, feel free to do if you want to yourself in your trading, but for me, 150 is a little bit more of a longer term, higher time frame target. In terms of the target for the trade, we could be looking at areas such as this high over here. We could be looking at areas around here, 147-ish. These look for good targets as well. Still some decent distance. We're looking at around, well, to that area there, we're looking at about 200 pips in that area there, 300 pips. So still a lot of mileage on that trade. But in terms of the risk reward, it does make a lot of sense. Maybe get 1 to 3, 1 to 4, maybe 1 to 5. And get some really decent trades going. But as you can see, the market's still giving us higher highs and higher lows here. So in terms of the direction for dollar yen, for me, it's pretty clear. But obviously we're coming into a major resistance that did see the market kind of fall off a cliff a little bit not too long ago. So we don't really want to be buying into this level. So we were either waiting for price to pull away, aka come back and retest that level, or break through it and then come back and retest it on the other side. But in terms of direction, still looking at buys for dollar yen. Keep an eye on the break and retest of 144.900, 145 we'll call it, or the break and retest of 143.700, and yeah, looking at continuations all the way to 147 and eventually 150. Okay, so onto dollar CAD. So dollar CAD was quite bullish this week, some nice upside momentum. We were expecting that from a weekly standpoint. We were looking at the weekly candle closures for the past couple of weeks. Did see a nice bullish engulfing, bunch of wicks to the downside. We also had this long-standing trend line keeping us afloat there, as you can see, and we had a really nice candle closure last week. So coming into this week, we were expecting some upside, and as you can see, we did get a nice bullish candle, but I still believe there's more upside to go in terms of probability, not because I have a secret magic ball or something, but expecting more upside back to that zone up there from a weekly standpoint, which is more or less around the 1.355 is where I got that level starting. So I do still see more upside for dollar CAD into that level. Therefore, we're looking at retracements and continuations going to next week. And this is a lovely level which price did retest on Thursday, Thursday, lovely retest, and potentially you could see the move happen pretty early next week. But if the market is kind enough, we potentially could come back down, retest the level, double bottom, and then look for our continuations as such. So dollar CAD for me still pretty bullish, looking at longs from the retest of 1.338. If we were to come back there, double bottom, and then probably push the upside, that would make a whole lot of sense. Of course, looking at our entries and getting confirmations in this particular area, we potentially could retrace a little bit further, potentially back to some of these areas here as well, around 1.326. So if we do fall back a little bit further than expected, I would still be expecting more upside for dollar CAD. and buys from here do make a lot of sense as well. But at the moment, I think we'll be lucky just to get a pullback into this level. So keep a close eye on 1.338 for some longs. Targets, again, logically back to the highs make a lot of sense there at 1.349. But we do have that weekly zone just above us as well. So if you want to push your trade a little bit further, it does make sense. But at the same time, better to be safe than sorry and take your profit in that sensible area. So back at the high does make a lot of sense at 1.349. If you do come a little bit deeper, then of course keep an eye on 1.328 down here for some longs as well. Target, same thing as well. Better risk reward back to the highs and potentially that weekly zone. So yeah, keep an eye on both of those opportunities. Dollar CAD still very bullish on, expecting some new highs next week. Okay, so on to Euro Pound. So Euro Pound still quite choppy, but starting to gain my interest. We're gaining traction to the upside, starting to see successive higher lows here. So it does look like market could be gaining some strength to the upside, possibly for a move back to 0.868, which is this resistance up here. You can see we're starting to print these higher lows together. We're coming back into a nice area of confluence and broken resistance and support. If you can throw some wicks, see some nice rejection here, I do believe there could be some nice buys back up into that zone, or at least the high here on the left as well. So I'm starting to gain some traction here with Euro Pound. However, the only thing I don't like about this opportunity is that it is counter trend on the higher time frames. If I scale to the daily chart, you can see overall momentum is to the downside with these successive lower highs. 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 there if we eventually break structure to the downside. So the market is kind of trending to the downside. It's not the cleanest trend, don't get me wrong. I'm not really seeing much momentum. But if this was pro trend, I'd be a much bigger fan of the opportunity. So if the market was trending up and then we saw these high lows here, I'll be a much bigger fan of getting in some longs. The fact that momentum is down is what's is what I don't like about the opportunity. It could still play out because again, everything's probabilities, but we just don't have that factor in our corner. It's opposing us. But nonetheless, the structure is clear, and if we do break through this area here, so let's say we don't reject it and see good entry signals, if we do break through this, then we could just see a big swing to the downside and probably just see the market continue to range, to be fair. The market has been very choppy, it's been ranging for a while, so the price action definitely isn't clean. But if we can hold this area, I do favor bias to the upside for Euro Pound, so keep an eye on it if you are looking to trade Euro Pound next week. For me, there are probably other better opportunities out there, so I probably won't be invested in Euro Pound. Maybe if I see some good strong entry signals, I might be interested to take the trade, but because the higher time frames are against it, I probably will just move on to a different opportunity. But if you're looking at Euro Pound, keep an eye on 0.862 for some buys, wait for your entry confirmations there, and you've got a couple targets to aim for, back to the swing high here at 0.866, or the swing high up there at 0.868 for next week. Okay, so up next we've got Aodu USD. So for this one, looking particularly bearish this week. We were still expecting more downside coming into the week, but we are coming into some major support on the daily time frame. So I'm taking a pause with my bearish bias. I'm still very bearish, don't get me wrong, with this particular market. However, I don't want to be shorting directly into major support. As you can see, big level of support, big move to the upside. Doesn't really make sense for me to be looking for sells into this area. Maybe on an intraday scale, you can find some smaller bearish moves to take advantage of, because for the most part, we have been seeing bearish momentum for the past couple of weeks. So even the low time frames you bias probably would be bearish as well. So you might be able to get away with some shorter term sell opportunities, some scalps maybe. But as a swing trader, intra-week trader, doesn't really make much sense for me to be looking to short directly into a support level as such. So for me, AUD/USD, I'm still looking at pushback down to these lows, 0.862. So I'm either looking at two things happening. Either next week we just break through, the market's just very, very bearish. We look for some pullbacks, some retest, and then we look for continuations lower, or we react bullish from this area, see another lower high present itself, and then potentially attack lower. So I'll be waiting for either one of these opportunities to happen. Either the market breaks through, pulls back, retest some structure, then we get short, or we see a move to the upside. Eventually the market starts to topple over, give us some lower highs to trade, and then short it to the downside. So the only thing wrong about this, not wrong, but the only thing I don't like about AUD/USD right now is just the location. The market is a little bit choppy now. As you can see, not really seeing as much momentum as before, and the fact we're coming to major support on the left doesn't really scream sell to me. It more actually screams buy, but I wouldn't buy because my bias is definitely bearish on this one. So like I said, waiting for a bigger push to the upside, then a lower high somewhere, maybe coming back into some broken support here on the left, and then we start forming that. Or we just crack straight through the zone here, get another pullback, maybe a lower high present itself, looking at these highs here together, retest some structure there, and then we can get some sells accordingly. So with AUDUSD, there isn't really a particular setup I'm looking for entries for just yet. My direction is pretty clear for AUDUSD, but just the setup is lacking at the moment. So I'm kind of waiting for that to develop, which may take a few days. So coming into next week, maybe my analysis next week will give a little bit better trading opportunities to actually look for some entry triggers. But at the moment, I'm kind of just waiting for my bias to develop to actually give me an opportunity to trade. So I'll keep an eye on the break when we test this level, or potentially a deeper pullback, and then I'll start monitoring price action. Make sure you do stay up to date with my streams, because obviously I'll be streaming my trades during the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on my channel. So I will be talking about AUDUSD and how I'm looking to tackle the price action here. So if we do see a nice pullback during the midweek, and then I'm looking for some opportunities there, I'll obviously keep you guys up to date with that. But at the moment, just waiting for a bit more development. Let's see if we can get the break and retest or a bigger pullback. But yeah, the end goal still lies down here at 0.62 for next week, or not for next week, but eventually. Okay, so next up we've got NZD CAD. So NZD CAD was quite bearish this week. It all happened all of a sudden on Thursday. A lot of movement happened on Thursday after the news. I'm pretty sure after CPI did see some nice movement. And as you can see, a leak to the downside. We were looking for a lower high. Didn't manage to get into any trades for NZD CAD this week. Market was very, very choppy. Wicks to the upside, it's kind of moving sideways. At my area of interest, I didn't manage to get any trades with this one, but eventually it did break to the downside. Lovely move, but not to worry, because I still do think there's opportunities to be had. On the higher time frames, we are coming back into major support here on the left, so I do want to see sort of something what I just talked about with AUDUSD, either a pullback or the market breaks through. I still do expect more downside for NZD CAD. If I quickly scale to the higher time frames, like the weekly, you can see successive low highs for quite a while. Eventually we may push back down to these lows again. Monthly as well, successive low highs. So there's a pretty good opportunity, there's a pretty good possibility that we are going to push to these lows. So again, for AUDUSD, for pairs like those, for the foreseeable future, just looking to short those major swing highs and take advantage of that higher time frame momentum. But next major target, now that we are coming into these lows, will be this price support here on the left at 0.795. Yeah, 0.794 we'll call it. So yeah, the next major support level, next major target will be this support level here. But yeah, need to look for some pullbacks now. So it's either we can clear the support level and then look for some retests on the way down, or what I would like to see is that the market has a reaction at the support level, pulls back to the upside, because again, I don't want to be shorting at these prices, pulls back to the upside, and then we can look for a lower swing high and a retest some structure somewhere. We do have a lovely support level here, which we didn't break through. Didn't get a retest of, so that looks like a nice place for a retest, and then from there we can be looking at some shorts to the downside. Again, depending how far you want to take the trade, you can obviously be looking at a push back down to these lows here if you want to. You can call it a day at these lows, so that'll be up to you, but eventually the next target we are looking at 0.79400. So yeah, NZD CAD still pretty bearish, still continue with the lower highs here successively. So the next lower high, hopefully we can get into and anticipate the more downside that we're expecting in the higher time frame. So NZD CAD looking at another pullback into 0.81. Next kind of major target will be 0.79. Potentially could go a lot further, but we'll just call it at that for now. But yeah, hopefully get some pullbacks into 0.81 and shorts back down into 0.794 for next week. Okay, so up next we've got Pound NZD. So Pound NZD really pushing to the upside now. Lovely bullish leg to the upside. We've continued with the successive higher lows here, as you can see. So again, the market's been painting a picture for us, kind of showing us that it wants to break to the upside most likely, and that's exactly what it's done. I did say looking for the break and retest at this level looks like a good opportunity. Didn't quite see it. We did see a nice breakout, however, not quite enough to retrace and actually retest that level. We kind of had a very shallow retracement / consolidation before the market kind of ripped to the upside there. So going into next week, we're still looking at the same pullbacks. A break me tested this high or even still this level here as well. If you want to have a slightly deeper pullback, that'll be up to pound NZD. But right now, pound NZD is kind of in the middle of nowhere. So you want to see a pullback at least before looking to do anything. I want to look to short the market. I know people will be expecting some retracement, and rightly so. But again, it's just not a high probability opportunity to take. There's no real logical place for your stop loss. Not really shorting off any area of value really, apart from the fact that the market might need to retrace. And again, even look at the higher time frames, the next kind of logical place we can look for pound NZD to get to is the top of this wick here, which is still very far away, trading at 2.175. You can see price, we haven't been at these prices for a very long time. So, and that kind of wick almost kind of lines up with that resistance there as well. So this wick here is kind of the next major target for pound NZD. We're very far away from that, but you know, knowing the market being very unexpected, you know, this time next week, we might only be a few pips away. But yeah, looking at some pullbacks, these two levels look very good for some opportunities. When we get there, start looking at price action, seeing how it develops, rejects, and we can get some nice entries with some nice entry triggers. Could be a decent opportunity there to take a full advantage of. In terms of targets, you know, if we do pull back from here, that looks like a solid place to put your target back at the recent swing highs. So depending where that high is, if we go a little bit further, then pull back, so wherever that high lands, that will be a nice reasonable target. If you want to push beyond that, then you could probably look at some fib extensions or potentially utilizing the psychological levels here. We got 2.13 just above us, so that could be a nice little target there if you want to. But again, I'll just keep it to wherever that swing high forms as my target for the trade. But pound NZD buys look good. Keep an eye on the breaking me test of 2.10610 and also 2.09. Two lovely levels to look for entries from. Just need to see a good pullback before we can look for our trade. So keep an eye on some pullbacks for pound NZD, but still expecting more upside going into next week. Okay, so onto CAD yen. So CAD yen for me is like a lagging dollar yen. You haven't seen my analysis for dollar yen. It was the second pair analyzed. So if you haven't seen it, I don't know what you've been doing. But yeah, it's kind of like a lagging dollar yen. In terms of the price action, look at the daily time frame. They've all been quite similar. We're kind of looking at this double bottom to be our next high low, and we're looking at a push back into that resistance. But for dollar yen, we kind of reached that resistance already, which is 145. And I'm still expecting price to go and hit this at 109.529 for CAD yen. But for this one, we're still kind of stuck at resistance. So going into next week, we're waiting for this resistance to break, look for some pullbacks on top of it, which is what I was calling for a couple of weeks ago when we had the original breakout there. Although it was quite shallow, I wanted to see price kind of push away a little bit further, look for some pullbacks, then continuation. So that's kind of what I'm looking for this week. And then we can look at some upside into that level at 109.500. Possibly we might react bearish from that, see some downside initially. There's a level here I would also look at as well, although we do have that resistance just above us, so be careful. But it's a nice level of broken resistance, nice sharp move to the downside. Price is broken through that. We may come back and revisit 107 before we do see some upside. But in terms of the direction for CAD yen, for me, it's very bullish. Across the yen pairs, I'm quite bullish going into next week for most of them. Maybe apart from Aodu JPY and NZD JPY, those are a little bit weird. Those two pairs, but apart from that, every other yen pair, CAD yen, pound yen, euro yen, dollar yen, Swiss yen. Yeah, apart from Aodu JPY and NZD JPY, I'm pretty much bullish on all other yen pairs. So I will be expecting this to reach back at the highs there pretty soonish, maybe next week or if not the week after. So targets back up 109.500, looking for the breaking retest of 107.750, or if you pull back into 107.100, that also looks good. But looking at some buys back into the swing highs next week. Okay, so over to pound USD. So I am bearish on this pair, hence why I do have a short position on at the moment for pound USD. But we came into a nice area of confluence, and from this particular area, I'm expecting more downside back into the lows here, potentially like a big kind of head and shoulder pattern. It's not the most obvious one in the world, but as you can see the left there, this is the head, and then I'm looking at this being the right shoulder for moves to the downside. So it's not the cleanest pattern, but does kind of fit the mold. And I'm looking at this bearish trend continuing back into these lows, and then of course We've got some lows here to target, and potentially, you know, even further down here as well. So these are the next kind of targets I'm looking at for pound USD to trade towards. So in terms of entries, again, you probably want to see price come back up to that particular area where I entered. I entered on Thursday, because right now I'm not really seeing clear entries for pound USD. We're kind of in a weird consolidation, so potentially on the break and retest of the low here at 1.26859, there could be some nice shorts below that. If you can get underneath that level, that could make sense. I would be careful of this support level there, because it's not too far away, so that would make for a nice first TP, or just a TP in general. But yeah, in terms of shorting opportunities, you want to see price either come back to the resistance up here, trading at 1.277, then you look for your shorts accordingly, or you want to see a break and retest of the current level of support, and then look for your shorts there as well. So going forward for pound, expecting more downside. I will change my bias if we do take out this high here on the left, not really the left, kind of down the middle. But if you do take out that high, that would tell me that, okay, the market is probably back bullish again, because at that point we're breaking through a lot of levels of structure, back above the high there on the left as well, and we probably will continue back to the high. So if you do take out this wick here, that will tell me, okay, well, first of all, I'll be stopped at my trade, but also tell me that, okay, pound USD is not probably going to go bearish anymore. And the fact is, we're breaking higher, we're still respecting the higher highs and higher lows on the daily chart. Most likely we're going to push higher. So that's the only time I would kind of throw away that bearish bias and look for buys. But as long as we stay below that high there, looking at shorts going into next week. Don't know how long this consolidation will continue for, but I would be expecting the market to break to the downside. So next target, we're looking at 1.26 and then 1.25. And eventually probably 1.24 as well. So keep an eye on some more lower highs next week for pound dollar. Okay, so over to pound CAD. So pound CAD for me coming to the week was quite bullish, looking for the next higher low for pound CAD. So as you can see, this is the daily time frame. Had a higher low over here, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low. I was looking for another one here for a push back into the resistance here on the left. And then if we broke through that resistance, I'll be looking at the high over there. So that was the plan going into the week for pound CAD. We did reach objective number 1, which was obviously hit the resistance here on the left. But looking at the price action and looking how we are rejecting that current area, it does look like we're likely to see a move to the downside, and potentially from a bearish standpoint, we've had a very strong impulse to the downside. This could just be a big bear flag, and we could be expecting to see the market leak to the downside again. So impulse, correction 1, correction 2, and then the next impulse. So for pound CAD, I can see a move to the downside. However, it's not that high probability, so I'm not really keen to trading it. But from how price action is looking, I definitely wouldn't be wanting to be looking for buys unless we were to break above this level. If pound CAD was to break above this resistance here, then for me buys look good. So let's say we see a breakout above, some pullbacks there, and then some buys, because now we got, you know, these high lows here. So if you connect the dots sort of thing, you know, things are looking good for some break and retest on top of that area there. So I would be interested in some longs if we can break above 1.71, but at this rate, with all those wicks, with all that rejection, it does not look likely that we will break above that resistance. But if we do, I'm here for it. I'll be waiting for my entries on the break and retest of that area. Got some good confidence on a strong level. Got the trendline confluence as well. If you can get some good entries, that'll be fantastic. And we got a lovely target up there with probably a decent risk reward, looking at 1 to 3, 1 to 4, maybe 1 to 5 as well. So I really do like the buys with pound CAD if we can break above the resistance, but of course for that rejection, not looking likely. So we could actually be looking at a move to the downside instead for pound CAD, and possibly another bearish swing. So in that case, you can be looking to take some sells here. Again, like I said, it's a little bit too aggressive for me for the sells. I'm not a big fan of it, but if the market does keep breaking to the downside, and if this is going to be that bear flag, then I'll be expecting momentum to pick up and some more downside moves. In terms of a target, this is obviously a big target, big support level there at 1.686, we'll call it. So shorts below this low look good, or even up there if you want to be a bit more aggressive with your risk reward. But even a break of that low looks good as well. So pound CAD, I do favor a drop to the downside because how price is reacting. But if I am wrong, because again, anything can happen in the market, If I am wrong and the market does break to the upside above that resistance, then I will be looking for some longs for pound CAD, and that is definitely a decent opportunity as well. So buys above 1.712 back into the highs there at 1.73. If we sustain the resistance and break through the support level, then sells look the best, 100%, and looking at a push back down into 1.688 for next week. Okay, so into pound yen. So pound yen, lovely move to the upside. We're now trading back at 184, which was the targets for this one. Now for this one, you want to see price either have another pullback to the downside, then we can be looking at the next higher low for another move higher, or potentially price just break through this level, then look for the pullbacks above it, retest it, and then the continuation. So very, very simple price action for me for pound yen. Again, still looking at this kind of upwards channel that price has been trading in. This is where I bought from last week, so lovely move to the upside from that. This again was the big fake out, expecting price to now print some new highs. So see what we have, another pullback, price comes into that same area, next higher low, or we just have a break and retest of that level. I do favor probably the break and retest of that. I'm not too sure if we do see that move there will happen. If we do, we potentially might not see price come back up as bullish. But for me, pound yen is still a very bullish market, still seeing successive higher highs and higher lows. Trend is still up on multiple time frames, and most importantly the higher time frames. So daily, weekly, monthly, all still displaying a lot of bullish momentum and likely to continue as well. So pound yen for me next week, still expecting more upside. In terms of targets, it's difficult. You know, if you were to see a break to the upside and then get the pullback, wherever that high kind of stands, would probably be the sufficient target, because above that, we're kind of trading in no man's land. We haven't been here for a very long time. I don't think we've been here since maybe 2016, was it? Yeah, 2015, 2016. So we haven't been here for a very long time. So in terms of targets, there's not really a significant target to aim for, maybe apart from the psychological levels. But if you do see a really nice breakout, create some new highs, then we get the pullbacks, wherever that high kind of stands would be a decent target to have. So that's kind of how I'm going to look to tackle pound yen going to next week. But the bias is definitely very bullish. I'm not interested in sells at that resistance, waiting for the price to break up and then pull back, and then look for some buys in the breaking retest of 184, or have a deeper pullback into around 181,500. Then we can anticipate some higher lows from that. So looking at some more upside next week for pound yen. Okay, so over to gold. So gold, I am bearish on gold. We didn't hold that area of confidence on the daily time frame. We had that nice inverse head and shoulder pattern, and also this long-standing trend line coming into action around the 1930 area, 1940 area. So I had some good confidence in that level. But as you can see, we did not hold. It did not hold, and price is broken through. So the next target for gold is now for price to come back into these lows here, around, well, just underneath 1900. So for me, there's more downside to be had for gold. The market is quite corrective. So in terms of pullbacks, we could either do one or two things: stay within this kind of corrective channel and just see another kind of lower time frame pullback, maybe retest some structure on the hourly, 30 minute, maybe 15 minute, and continue that trend to the downside with these successive lower highs, or potentially see a bigger pullback to the upside, maybe come back and retest some structure over here around 1945. There's a nice level of support there. Could maybe break to the upside, take out some of the weaker lower highs down the left, form a major lower high, and then again drop to the downside. So the key thing for gold is that we've broken through some major structures, so even on the higher time frames as well. So I do most likely expect, I was about to say definitely there, shouldn't say definitely, I do most likely expect to see more downside for gold back down to 1900, 1895 into those lows. So the probability of that happening is pretty high. In terms of looking for trades, like I said, we do have this choppy kind of corrective trend here, which could just spill over during the week, you know, kind of continue that downwards trend, and suddenly maybe some momentum from some news or whatever, and we just kind of roll over. Or if we have a bigger pullback, form a major lower high, then obviously that will come a very juicy move there as well. So that's kind of how I'm looking to tackle gold for next week. Definitely very, very bearish on the pair myself in terms of my bias, and we'll be expecting more downside to be had probably early next week if the market doesn't have that bigger pullback. If it does, then we might see the first half of the week bullish, followed by the second half being bearish. So that would be nice. That's kind of what I'm hoping gold to do, but again, I don't decide that. We could just potentially roll over from this channel. So that's why I'm looking at both opportunities. So yeah, gold pretty bearish, looking at 1905. Keep an eye on the retest of 1915 or 1945, depending on the time frames you're looking to trade. But yeah, probably expecting some new lows past this point next week for gold. Okay, so over to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has been quite choppy the past few days. We have broken out of one consolidation and kind of come back into another. So I haven't really been too interested with the price action with Bitcoin. I do still like this level here. This is kind of the level I was talking about when we originally had the first breakout. This is where I was expecting Bitcoin to come into before maybe seeing another push higher. So I'm still favoring that move there for Bitcoin in around 28,500. However, now Bitcoin has created some very strong support around the 29k mark. As you can see, a bunch of wicks into this area. Market keeps trying to break through this but failing to do so. So now it's kind of created a consolidation between that 29k level and obviously this level here as well. So not really keen to trade within that. I suppose some shorts retesting the level might be nice, kind of taking advantage of the range and maybe lucky enough of the breakout to the downside. So that does make sense. But for me, the real move for Bitcoin is if we can break lower, test 28,500 and then look for some buys, or if we just break above that and then possibly see the next high low form here, look for the retest of 29,800, then we've got some buys pretty clean back to the highs there as well. So for Bitcoin, I do think buys I kind of get ready for the next big move here. I would be favoring more upside. Just depends what Bitcoin wants to do, whether it wants to break and retest 28,500 first, or if you're just going to break to the upside early next week, and then we can look for the retest on pretty much 30k, 28,900 we can call it, and then obviously some clean targets back at the previous swing highs. Obviously these are major resistance. If we go to the weekly chart, you can see, take that across, it's a big level of broken support, which is now turn resistance. So definitely a level to, if not, just lock in profits. If you want to expect Bitcoin to go higher, you know, it's a nice place to look to manage the trade at least, or just call it a day. That'll be up to you. But yeah, going forward, Bitcoin still looking at more upside back to the highs, but right now just consolidation really. So in that kind of area, I would stay away and just wait to see if we can break lower or get the break and retest to go higher. But that's the analysis going into next week for Bitcoin. Okay, so for the bonus pair this week, we've got Euro Yen, another Yen pair. So like I said with the Yen pairs, apart from Aodu JPY and NZD JPY, all the other Yen pairs I'm pretty bullish on. So Euro Yen, Pound Yen, CAD Yen, Dollar Yen, Swiss Yen, all those Yen pairs I'm very bullish on in terms of the price action. And for Euro Yen, still expecting more upside. And for this one, we've broken through such a critical level of resistance. It's definitely important to take note of it, which was 158, I believe. Yeah, 158 we'll call it. So big level of resistance, broke through with a quite confident move as well. So I like price action, strong big bullish candles above the level, really breaking through and pulling away, and we hadn't had a retest yet as well. So that's kind of what I'm expecting next week. The market for me is still printing higher lows. I'm still considering this to be a big fake out of the market here, so I'm not kind of factoring that into play. So I'm still looking at these higher lows here going forward. So if I can see a nice pullback for Euro Yen into this particular area here as well, I do believe that the next major move for Euro Yen will be another continuation higher. Same thing for Pound Yen. I'm not too sure about targets apart from the relative swing high. So if we do see the pullback happen to the downside from this area, that would make for sufficient target back at 159-ish for a TP. That will be a sensible place to put your target. Any higher than that, then again, you want to use fib extensions or maybe some other indicator to work out your targets, or you can utilize the psychological levels on the right. Like I said, you got 159 there, which is more or less back at that high. You got 159,500, also 160, which is a very big psychological level. 160 is a big one, so could see the market potentially longer term attracted to 160. So not a bad place for a TP, but although it is pretty far away, you are looking about 200 pips. Yeah, around 200 pips there to the upside. So it's up to you if your risk reward, of course, that'll be down to the trader. But in terms of the analysis, my analysis, looking at more upside back to 159 if we can get a successful retest. Then we can look at 159,500 and potentially 160 eventually. So yeah, definitely looking at some more buys next week for Euro Yen. But yeah, guys, that sums up the analysis going into next week. If you are finding these videos very useful, helpful, please be sure to drop a like and also comment down below and let me know. I definitely like hearing, comments that you guys are enjoying the channel, finding it useful. It definitely does feel like I'm doing a good job out here. So if you are enjoying the channel, please be sure to let me know. But yeah, guys, if you have enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss out on any streams or uploads in the future. But other than that, have a fantastic weekend, and I'll catch you all next week.